Hi, welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I am doing a reading vlog. So I'm trying to fill a space on my bingo board, which is the outside your comfort zone space. And I figured that the genre that is most outside my comfort zone is actually romance. So I asked for some suggestions on my last TBR video and told you I was thinking about doing a vlog, and a lot of you loved the idea of seeing me do a vlog reading a romance. I will preface this by saying there's a chance that I'm really going to hate whatever I end up reading, so I'm going to try to kind of like temper it and look for the good things as well. And most of the books that I have selected here that are outside my comfort zone have an element of something I think I could possibly enjoy. So I'm not straight up choosing something that I'm like, there's no way I could ever like this book. I would like to like this book if that's possible. So I have 4 books that I have chosen that have elements that I think I might enjoy, or they were recommended by one of you. And I'm going to try a chapter to see what I think of these books, and then I'll let you know which one I choose, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce the books to you first. So the first one is Wicked Fox by Kat Cho, and I read a Kat Cho book, I think for our first K-Tropathon. I think she was the one who wrote Once Upon a K-Prom, and I didn't think that the writing was terrible on that, but it was a contemporary YA romance centered around K-pop, and so even though I like K-pop, it just really kind of like I was not the target audience. And Wicked Fox is more like Korean mythology based, which is why I think that there's a greater chance that I might like it, but romantasy is totally not my thing. There's always way too much romance in it and not enough fantasy. So I think that this might potentially be the same, but I did choose it because of the Korean mythology aspect, that might make me like it more. So I'm going to read the first sentence for you. It says, Ga Myung's relationship with the moon was complicated, as are most relationships centered around power. That's actually a really good first sentence. I like it. The next one we have is By the Book, which I think is actually maybe a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I'm not totally sure on that though. That it might have some of those like kind of fairy tale elements. It's part of a series, but I think the series is not interconnected because this is not book 1 in the series. So I think it's just they're all themed around, you know, fairy tale type things, because I think one of them is like If the Slipper Fits, or, you know, something like that, which feels very Cinderella-like. But this one is obviously quite bookish, and if it has anything to do with Belle and bookishness, that means that there's a chance that I'll enjoy it. So the first sentence for this one is, Isabel Marlowe smiled at the world as she walked down the bustling, crowded Manhattan street. Okay, that's not a very exciting first sentence, but that's okay. Next we have The Brilliance of Stars, which I think is a historical romance, and maybe even like a Christian historical romance, but I'm not totally sure. But it does have like some like action and like spy type stuff to it as well. I think it might be set during like World War One. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. So that was why I chose this one, but this author was recommended to me by one of you. Historical fiction is not my jam either, usually. I mean, I do like some historical fiction, but it's not a genre that I tend to delve into very much. The first sentence says, she kissed Jack hard on the mouth, then aimed her Beretta over his shoulder and fired a round of shots down the medieval corridor of Dobrizhov Castle. For some reason, that is a frequently highlighted sentence, and it's the first sentence. I'm not really sure. I also have here an epistolary novel that's a Christian fiction, and it's Authentically, Izzy by Pepper Basham. I've heard a lot of people talk about this, and I think that the entirety of the book is emails sent from Izzy, the main character, to her friends. And I am not a fan of epistolary novels. I don't typically like contemporary Christian novels, and I also don't like romance, so it's like a lot of outside my comfort zone. So you might be wondering, why on earth would I choose this book? First of all, apparently it has a rom-com-y feel, which I prefer the comedy aspect to like a straight up romance. Secondly, I know that our main character is obsessed with Lord of the Rings, and girl, same. We have a prologue here, and the first sentence of the prologue is, Dear reader, this is a cautionary tale. A tale of family, literary classics, podiatry, matchmaking, Shakespeare, and distance. Not exactly the sort of word grouping you may expect in a typical story, but some things aren't meant to be typical. So I just read more than the first sentence because I was intrigued with kind of like the writing style. So there is a chance that I might like that one. And apparently also, actually, I guess I have 5 on here. This last one is not one that I chose because I think I'm going to like it. Or that it even has any elements whatsoever that I might like. This one is a complete wild card, but this is a very popular romance writer, and so that's why I chose it, and it's Catherine Center's The Bodyguard. I think that this is also pretty rom-com-y, and it has to do with, I think, like, so I feel like she's the bodyguard. I feel like it's kind of flipped on its head, and I think that it might have like a fake dating trope in it, but I'm not really sure. I didn't really read very much about the description. I just know that this is one that like a lot of people love. So I decided I would throw this on here just for the heck of it. The first sentence says, "My mother's dying wish was for me to take a vacation." Okay. Anyways, I actually don't have very high hopes for The Bodyguard. The ones that I have the highest hopes for is By the Book and possibly Wicked Fox, just because I think that it has some elements that I could find maybe the story really interesting, even if I'm not as invested in the romance. Anyways, those are the books. I'm going to try a chapter of each of them, and I'm going to come back and let you know which one I chose, and then vlog my thoughts throughout the rest of it. Hopefully this doesn't end up being a hate vlog. Hopefully I actually find something outside my comfort zone that I actually enjoy. Hi friends, I figured I would do a little update because I am sitting waiting at an appointment, and I've read a little bit of all of the books that I introduced to you. So 2 of the books that I read, Wicked Fox and The Brilliance of Stars. The Brilliance of Stars, I think I only read the first chapter. Wicked Fox, I read the first like 2 or 3 chapters because I'm very interested by it, because it is about a 9-tailed fox. The girl is the 9-tailed fox, and she kind of like sucks the life out of people to stay alive, but she's decided that she's going to do that with people who are actually bad people who deserve to be punished for things that they've done. So it's almost like this vigilante justice to justify the fact that she has to suck the life out of people. We also follow a boy who is just kind of like, I don't know, he just charms everyone around him. And so as a result gets away with anything that he wants, and he kind of ends up in the woods chasing after his dog, wrong place, wrong time, and encounters a fight between the female fox and a dokebi, I think, which is like a goblin essentially. So that's kind of where I left off on that. I do like it. I think it's really fun, but it feels very not romance. And I'm sure that the romance aspects will pick up as the book goes on. But the same thing is true of The Brilliance of Stars, where it's about these 2 kids who are orphans on the street, and they get caught listening to these like spies. And so as a result, they're like, get kind of like getting in trouble with those kinds of things. So I don't dislike either of those books, but I also feel like I really, really want this to be a vlog of me reading a book that is straight up romance, because that is so outside my wheelhouse, and I feel like that's going to be more fun to listen to my thoughts of that. I did read the first 2 chapters of The Bodyguard, and I think I've had all I can take of that one. I don't think I can deal with it. It's really weird, and I don't know. Okay, so we've got this person who starts out with her mother dying, and she starts talking about how she's trying to go into work right after her mother died because she didn't have a great relationship with her. Her mom was an alcoholic, but she is still grieving. She comes into work, and her boss basically refuses to let her go on this trip that she was supposed to go on with her boyfriend, and instead is having her boyfriend go with her best friend who also works at this place. It kind of left off at the end of the chapter being a little bit unclear about what she does for a living, so I decided that I would continue to read on because I wanted to know what she does for a living. Turns out she is essentially sort of a bodyguard, but she says that you often view bodyguards as someone who kind of look like a bouncer, and that they look big and bad and like all this stuff, and that's not really the kind of bodyguard that you want. You want a bodyguard that is inconspicuous and can stop things before they happen, because a bouncer style bodyguard is only going to draw attention to you if you don't want attention drawn to you, if you don't want to be mobbed, if you don't want people to come after you. So having a low-key bodyguard that people don't notice, might think is the nanny, might not notice at all, period, is actually ideal. Anyways, that's what she does for a living. She was about to go with her boyfriend, and then they drive home together, and he breaks up with her in her driveway or whatever, and they've been dating for a year, and he breaks up with her because they quote-unquote never really liked each other anyway, and she's a bad kisser. And I'm like, you've been dating for a year, sleeping together for a year, and now you're gonna break up with her because she's a bad kisser, and you guys never really liked each other anyway. Like, that doesn't even make any sense to me, and it feels like entirely like so slapdash. Like, we just needed a reason, and like it's like the author picked a reason out of a hat and just like didn't even write anything to make it remotely convincing. It was just really bizarre. And I don't really like the voice of the character, so definitely not continuing with that one. That leaves me with two choices, both of which are the bookish ones, and I have qualms about both and things I like about both. Both of them I'm about 20% of the way through, so I've made it a lot farther in these ones than I have in the other books. Ironically enough, both of them have main characters named Izzy, and both of them have supporting characters named Josephine. So that's really really funny. By supporting, like, by the book, Josephine's a much smaller character. So by the book, the Izzy is working in the book publishing industry. She wants to be like an editor, and so she's working for this company called Tale as Old as Time. So you can tell even from that we're going in a Beauty and the Beast direction. She is an assistant to an editor, wanting to become an editor someday. She's Black in an industry where there's not a lot of Black women, and so to work her way up is kind of difficult. And the Josephine in this book is actually a Black editor who has encouraged her and like helped her find her way and all that kind of stuff. So Izzy is tasked with following up with this celebrity who's signed a book deal to write his memoir, but he won't respond to any of their emails. And so Izzy just decides when she's in like the area, I think Santa Barbara actually, which makes me think of Psych. She decides that she's just going to show up at his house and try to talk to him. And she does. She ends up staying at his house because she kind of like, she misses her flight because she helps his assistant who sprains her ankle. And so it's a whole thing. My biggest issue with this book so far, because so far it's cute, it's not bad, and it's not making me cringe very much. So the thing is that the writing is like super conversational, and it's written in third person. And obviously it's a romance book. I didn't expect stellar prose. That's not what I'm going into this for. But the way that things are written, like for example, there's a book that she wants to read and it says she was like 60th on the waiting list for it at her library. And I'm like, why do we have filler words like? This is the narrative. This isn't like a conversation that I just said like. It doesn't bother me if in the dialogue it says that, but this is not the dialogue. This is actually, just a regular paragraph. And so there are things that I like about it, and then there are words like, here's another sentence. Marta gave her more and more work to do, more details to manage, more manuscripts to read, more authors to talk through their work with, cheer up, or get to chill out. And like, I feel like that sentence is not grammatically correct. Like, she's working with the authors, trying to work through their work with them, cheer them up, or get them to chill out. But I feel like the way that it's phrased, I had to read that sentence like 4 times. She's also, I don't know how old this author is. But there's a point where she goes in and the guy who she's trying to get him to write his memoir, of course he's like this big beefy like handsome guy, but he's like she's trying to give him advice to help him with like writer's block, or try to convince him to use a ghostwriter or something like that. She's just trying to get this memoir written, and he's basically like, you've seen it all. What are you, like 22? Izzy forced herself not to roll her eyes. She had good genes, okay? I'm 25. I'm like, 25 is not that much older than 22, and feels like it doesn't have that much more life experience. I guess 22 you might still be in college, so maybe 25 has a little bit more life experience than that. But I mean, it's funny. There's also really fun nods to Beauty and the Beast, like the fact that at this mansion where this guy lives, the Wi-Fi password is Lumiere. She walks down the staircase and she's like, oh, this is not a staircase you walk down, it's one you descend down. I need like a beautiful dress to walk down this in. I'm like, okay. Very Beauty and the Beast. She also talks to the bathtub at one point. The bathtub doesn't talk back to her, but again, that makes it feel like, you know, in Beauty and the Beast, where all these inanimate objects are actually alive and speaking. So then Authentically, Izzy is also quite bookish. It is epistolary, which is not really my jam. So far that's not bothering me that much. I feel like, I don't know, it feels a little disjointed because of it being epistolary, because you have our main character Izzy, who is a librarian but would like to own a bookstore someday, and so that's kind of the bookish element. She's obsessed with Lord of the Rings, but she has lots of literary references. So anytime you get any sort of letter or text or anything from Izzy, it's very enjoyable to read, especially if you're a bookish person. And I feel like the way that she writes, her phrasing is really, really nice, and so it actually has some good prose in there as well. But she's surrounded by these people who are just like, they're her cousins and they're her friends. She grew up with them. We found out that her parents died when she was young, and so she grew up with her cousins, and her oldest cousin Josephine is trying to set her up with people. She's trying to put her on dates, and then she creates an online dating profile for her, and she ends up changing her profile picture to Éowyn from Lord of the Rings, and she gets some flack from that, from people. They're like, why would you do that? Like, no one's gonna know who that even is. And it's like, first of all, like, how did she get so into Lord of the Rings and her cousins have no idea? Like, anytime she talks to any of her cousins, she has 2 girl cousins and a boy cousin, and anytime she talks to any of them, they have no idea what she's referencing. And I'm like, how do you move in with these people when you're like 10 or 12 years old and you love Lord of the Rings, and they have no idea what you're talking about? They've never seen the movies, they've never read the books, but you lived with them. Like, that seems strange. But also, like, if you're on an online dating profile where, like, a lot of people apparently on this app or website or whatever it's called, Heart to Heart, a lot of them have pictures that are not them, that are pictures of celebrities or movies or books or, you know, something like that. And I'm like, wouldn't that attract someone who knows who that is? Like, wouldn't you be really excited if someone messages you and is like, oh my gosh, I love Éowyn too, I think she's amazing, or like I am no man, or, you know, like some sort of quote from Éowyn? Like, would you not just love that? That would be like an indication that you found the right person, someone who enjoys the right things that you do. But Josephine is like constantly telling her, like, your time's running out. Like, if you like, you need to find someone soon because time is not on your side. I've just found out in the book that Izzy is 30 years old. I'm like, are you joking? What time is running out? She has plenty of time. Like, she's not like, it's not like she's like 40 years old and wants to have a baby, and so you're like, maybe you should hurry up and get married and have a baby, you know, because your time's running out. Like, she has so much time. She's not that old in this day and age to not be married or be in a serious relationship yet. And the person who, me, is currently saying this was married so young. But like, a lot of my friends were not. A lot of people I know were not married until they were, you know, in their late 20s or early 30s or mid 30s sometimes even. And so it's just like so silly to me to say that someone who just turned 30 years old, time's running out. You better hurry up. You better settle, because, you know, you're running out. Anyways, she ends up messaging this guy who lives in the UK named Brody, who is also a Lord of the Rings lover, but people are telling her that, like, this is a weird relationship because he likes Lord of the Rings too, and it's just weird. We also have text messages back and forth between her and her cousin Luke, which is the boy cousin, but he has like nothing to say about anything ever. Like, I don't even know why any of his texts or emails or anything are even included. Like, he adds literally zero to the plot, to the story, to anything. I get why Josephine's there because she's the one pushing it, and then I get the impression that Izzy is closer to her other cousin, who I can't remember what her name is right now, which says how much of an impact she's made on me. So it makes sense that she's talking about what Josephine's doing with Josephine's siblings, but yeah, I like Izzy as a character, but I don't like anyone else surrounding her, and this narrative of like, you really just need to settle down. I like how Izzy realizes at one point, she says, singleness with all my fictional friends is preferable over a poor choice. And I think that that's a good mentality to have. Like, yeah, she doesn't have like all these relationships, but like, she's happy and content in the season where she is. So why does she have to push herself to find love if she's okay with where she is right now? But then the whole point of this is actually romance. So I'm like leaning off towards Authentically Izzy, but there are things that bother me about By the Book. So I haven't made a final decision yet, but I am leaning towards By the Book because it's making me cringe less than Authentically Izzy. Not that Izzy herself makes me cringe, because she doesn't. It's just all the people around her and this like push narrative of like, you have to marry to be fulfilled as a Christian, and you should marry sooner rather than later. And I realize like not everyone in here is telling her she has to marry sooner rather than later. Marriage is a blessing. It's a gift. It's a representation of relationship between Christ and the church. And so I think marriage is a gift that helps us understand our relationship with God that much more. But at the same time, it's also just like can be put as the pinnacle of like what's most important in your life is to marry and to have children, when sometimes that's not what God has for you, or sometimes it doesn't happen in the time frame that is like, this is when you need to get married and all this stuff. And I just think it can end up making people feel so crappy about the season that they're in, or saying like it's a season of singleness. Maybe it's not, and maybe like God wants you here and wants you, and like, so I feel like sometimes it just ends up making people feel bad and look towards the future rather than wherever God has them right now. And I feel like it can be a really bad conversation. And this is coming from someone who married super young, who is glad that she married super young, who only ever wanted to be a wife and a mom, and absolutely loves being married. So this is not me trashing marriage or trashing parenthood or any of those kinds of things, but it is me saying that we need to have more nuanced conversations about these things, because the purpose of your life is not to be married or to be a parent. The purpose of your life is to have a relationship with the Lord, and whatever that ends up looking like is going to be different for different people. And so trying to force what you think everyone's life should be like can be so damaging. Anyways, those are my very serious thoughts on a very not serious book. I'm gonna come back to you and let you know. I'm gonna finish one of these books and we'll let you know which one I ended up finishing and my final thoughts. Hello, my friends. It's time for a final update on my reading experience, reading romance novels. I did end up finishing By the Book. I decided not to continue with Authentically Izzy. By going with By the Book, I actually ended up choosing, I think, the longest of the options that I had, which is funny. As I mentioned, this is very much a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but it's like the elements are more subtle, but if you're a fan of Beauty and the Beast, you will enjoy the references with kind of like the library and the yellow dress coming down the staircase. And, you know, there's just different things that you see that you're like, oh, okay, like this is definitely Beauty and the Beast. As I mentioned, our main character, Izzy, is a publisher's assistant, like an editor assistant at a publishing company, and wants to actually be an editor. I found out that the guy that whose memoir she's trying to get him to write, and she's staying at his house, he is the son of a screenplay writer. And so it's really interesting because he talks about how he was constantly like in the public eye, and if he got into fights or things happened, like everyone would recognize him everywhere he went. And I found that to be kind of a little unbelievable, because I feel like paparazzi often follows celebrities that are more in the public eye. Not that screenplay writers aren't famous or directors aren't famous or producers, because they can be, but I feel like most people are more interested in seeing the real life of like actors and people who aren't so much behind the scenes, but the people that you actually see their faces when you watch movies and stuff. I feel like people are much more interested in that. So I find it hard to believe that like the paparazzi was following his family consistently, because I feel like that doesn't seem like that would be the case. Anyways, I felt like a lot of this book was kind of cute, like watching their relationship develop as they're in close proximity, and he's a total jerk to her at first, but it has a lot more to do with like things that have upset him or traumatized him that he hasn't really ever talked to anyone about. And now he's supposed to be writing a memoir about these regrets and things that he has. So it kind of like makes sense that that he's struggling so much, but he does apologize for things like when he does things. So I don't feel like it's like romanticizing toxicity. Like he has a lot of emotional intelligence for someone who has never really talked about these things before. I feel like Izzy pulls that out of him by helping him to look at things a certain way. So I really like how their relationship progresses, especially because when she finds herself being kind of attracted to him, she's like, okay, I cannot go here. Like we are working together. He's not interested. I'm not his type, because up to this point, he's only dated like models and actresses and people who are like tall and thin, and I don't look anything like those girls. I also love the emphasis on books, of course, because she's in the publishing industry. She's trying to help him write a memoir. But I love the way that she views and talks about books. She says, I love books. I love everything about them. I love the way you can fall into another world while you're reading. The way books can help you forget hard things in life or help you deal with them. I love all the different shapes books come in and the way they feel in your hand. I love seeing authors develop their idea from just a few sentences to a manuscript to an actual book that's on the shelves. And I love the face they make when they see their name on a book cover for the first time. I love when readers discover books that felt like they were meant just for them, and they're so happy and grateful and emotional that everyone in the room wants to cry, and sometimes they all do. Those books change lives. So I just love how she thinks about books and how she loves books. And I love also her writing advice to Bo is really good. Like there are times where she says like, you are a writer. If you've written something, even if it's not what you like, you're still a writer. If you're writing, you're a writer. And she also tells him, you know, when he's kind of struggling to get words on the page, she helps him practically to be able to do that. But then she also tells him like, embrace the bad. If it's not what you want it to look like, that's okay. You just have to get started. That's the only way you can get past a writer's block, is to just get started and just get words on the page, and it doesn't even matter if they're bad. I also really love the emphasis on food in this book. Like they hardcore bond over snacks before they're like romantically involved, and I just think it's so fun, and I really enjoyed that. Bo has she's not a housekeeper. She's like a professional chef, but she also keeps his kitchen entirely stocked. And we find out that there's another thing that she's doing with him later, but I'm not going to talk spoilers. You can get to that if you read this book. But she has a snack cabinet that she keeps stocked, and it's an entire pantry just full of snacks. And once they're in a relationship, there's one thing that Izzy says to him that she's like, I always loved your commitment to snacks. That's something I always loved about you. And he's like, I could say the same about you. And so it's just, and I thought that was really fun. It definitely has like some foodie elements to the book, and that Izzy just really appreciates good food and she loves to eat and snack. And I really like how Izzy supports him and helps him to do hard things. So there were a lot of things that I did enjoy about this book, and I ended up feeling like overall it was like a relatively cute book. And for me to say that about a romance is saying a lot. But I do have complaints and I want to address those also. Obviously, if this is a romance book, you need some conflict, and you have conflict, you have like, you know, the third act breakup and then they get back together. It's like the same in every Hallmark movie. It's the same in every romance movie. It's the same in every romance book. Like, there are tropes that you're just gonna have, and it's just gonna play out the same way. And I think that's why some people love romance too, is because you're comforted. You know that no matter how bad things get, they are gonna get together in the end. And that, I think that that's really comforting for people. But the conflict in this book is dumb. It basically entirely surrounds around his writing, and him writing this memoir of things that were really difficult that happened when he grew up, and regrets of how he internalized those things or handled those things, or his relationship with his parents. It's different things like that you end up finding out exactly like what those things entail. So again, I don't want to be spoilery, but it's stupid because things are going well. She's finally getting him to write, and they're, you know, doing well, and then she pushes him on something that he's leaving out of the pages, like this turning point in his life, and he gets really upset at her, and he's like, you could never understand, you've never had things happen to me like I've had happen to me, you don't know what it's like to be a writer. And he says these things, and she goes off on him. Like, she flips out. Like, he's emotional because he has trauma and he has bad things that have happened to him. He doesn't know anything about her, and so for him to make those accusations, not knowing that she had a book that she showed to someone who told her it wasn't good, like, he pushed like a button in her that really upset her. And so then she's like, I can't believe he would talk that way to me, I can't believe he would hurt me like that, I can't believe I trusted him and let him in. And I'm like, he didn't know any of these things about you. This was not a dig at you. This had nothing to do with you. And I feel like if you're someone who understands humans at all, and you know that there's this thing that they're not talking about, and you push them, which in this case she had to, because she's like essentially his editor, trying to get him to help write this book and all these things. So she knows these things, and she's worked with difficult authors before. So for her to just like freak out and be like, he's so terrible, it's just ridiculous, and she flies off the handle right back at him. So it's not even any better of a situation. And she's like, I don't know if I can trust him again. I don't know if I can go back to the way that things were. And it was so stupid. There's another argument that happens later, and instead of blowing up, he walks away, and she gets just as mad about that and internalizes that. It's just dumb. She also doesn't expect him to give her a real apology, even though he's given her real apologies multiple times for how he treated her at the beginning of the book. And I'm just like, girl, like, the conflict was just absolutely stupid. I was like, you guys have been communicating so well, and then the moment that anything is the least bit off, all of a sudden all bets are off, and it's like, oh, this is terrible, this isn't gonna work. And I was just like so confused by that, because I felt like the conflict like was so overblown. Like, nobody in real life would act like this. And I get that, like, you know, a lot of times conflict in romance books isn't particularly relatable a lot of times, because they're arguments about things that are like a little bit more on the extreme side. So you're like, would that really happen? But this is like a situation where it's like, if this played out in a regular person's life with someone that they knew and were getting close to, like, they would show a lot more grace than Izzy did, and they would try to actually have conversations about it, instead of like automatically assuming the worst. And like, all, like, it was just like so silly. The other thing, and this is gonna be stupid to you guys who like romance books, I felt like the little boy in The Princess Bride during this book, where he's like, oh, is this a kissing book? Like, I know it's a romance. I knew there was gonna be kissing. I knew that it was closed door. It is closed door. Like, it's implied that more things happen, but you don't see any of that. But oh my gosh, there was so much kissing in this book, and it was ridiculous. And by ridiculous, I mean the fact that you would sometimes have 2 to 3 pages of just kissing, and that is all that is happening on the page. There's like maybe some flirtatious conversation about the kissing that's also happening, but it's just like, That's all that's happening. And I was just like, oh my god, I'm so sick of kissing. It got really boring because it was just like kissing, 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 a little flirty talking, more kissing. Oh my gosh, now we have to get work done, but all we're doing is thinking about it, talking about kissing. And it was just like whole chapters, really. Then there were a couple of quotes that I realize when you're first in a relationship and it's like really exciting and it's really sweet and like every moment is special. But there were moments where I was like, what? Like there was one point where she says, would she ever get tired of the way he held her like this? And he confessed his love the day before. He hugged her for the first time the day before. She's like, will I ever get tired of the way he holds me like this? And I'm like, it's been one day, I sure hope not. Then, after one of their fights, it said they hadn't touched since she'd left his room first thing that morning. She'd miss this when they make up. And I'm like, it hasn't even been 24 hours. Like, what? What do you mean you've missed this? Like, what? There were so many parts that were so ridiculous that I expected the ridiculousness, but I ended up really liking Izzy overall as a character, and I liked Bo overall as a character. I felt like no one else had even the slightest bit of character development. There's all these other side characters that come in and out, but I guess maybe that's not a big deal because first of all, you're here for the romance. It's a romance book. But secondly, like they are the ones living in this house by themselves, like Beauty and the Beast, for a little while. And so she's not actually seeing other people, but she's texting her friends. It says she texts her parents, but we don't ever see actually any conversations with her parents. She has multiple conversations with her boss. She has conversations with his like chef person, personal chef, and all that kind of stuff. And yet like there's pretty much nothing. Anyway, I thought this book was fine. Like I think it's like a 3-star for me. Like this is fine. I didn't actually hate it. I kind of expected myself to. I kind of expected myself to have a similar vlog as like Shark Heart last year, where I came to you with all kinds of quotes where I'm like, get a load of this. This is so ridiculous. And it wasn't as much that way, although I did have like some quotes I shared with you of things that I was like, really? Really? That's how you feel? Like relax. And then also, you know, the writing itself was so conversational, even in the prose, not just in the narratives and like the actual like conversations and dialogue, but like in the actual prose, it was so conversational that it was annoying. And I shared some of that with you as well. This is not a quality piece of literature, but if you're looking for a closed door romance that has kind of some Beauty and the Beast vibes, but it's not truly Beauty and the Beast, has like some good like emotional intelligence for the most part with our main characters, is really bookish, you might really like this. I hope you have enjoyed this little vlog of me reading something that I never read. I can't even tell you the last time I read a straight up romance book. I don't even know, probably not since I was like a teenager or a young adult, because oftentimes the romance that's a side plot I'm still not usually a huge fan of. So this was something that was extremely outside my comfort zone, but now I can check this off my bingo board. If you've read this book or any of the other books that I mentioned in this vlog, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me. And I will see you again next time.